Good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kapil Lakhotia and I'm the president of the London Economic Development Corporation and have a t-shirt to prove it. We're here to support you during this critical time, so please get in touch with our staff and visit our London COVID-19 portal where you will find vital updates, resources, economic relief, and local business supports. The link to this website is being posted in the chat box shortly. Now, a couple of housekeeping items before we dive in. Please note that this session is being recorded and will be available on the LEDC's YouTube channel. All attendees are muted during the webinar, but please note that you can submit questions using the Q&A feature in Zoom, and we'll do our best to get to as many as we can today. Now, we're delighted to have Kate Young, Member of Parliament for London West, with us this morning. Kate is the Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister of Economic Development and responsible for FedDev Ontario. Please welcome Kate, and now over to you, Kate, for some opening remarks, please.
Well, thank you very much, Kapil. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thanks so much. I greatly appreciate the efforts of the London Economic Development Corporation and the City of London in supporting Londoners through this unprecedented times. You know, it's a real era of uncertainty and Canadians are understandably stressed. And the message I've been giving, as well as the Minister of Economic Development, is that the federal government has your backs. And we have been working over the past over 2 months now, putting together different programs for businesses, for people who are the most vulnerable. And we've been tweaking those along the way after hearing feedback. And I hope people have understood why we did that and why it was important to keep changing and reflecting the needs of the businesses. So we're here today to talk about one in particular, one of the economic response plan programs. And before I throw that over to the people from FedDev, I did want to outline some of the other programs that we have announced over the last 2 months, including the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy to help companies rehire employees and prevent further layoffs, the Canada Emergency Business Account to provide small businesses access to interest-free loans for operating costs, the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance, which lowers rent by 75% for small businesses that have been affected by COVID-19, the Business Credit Availability Program that supports private sector financing through BDC and EDC, and of course other tailored programs to support businesses and help stabilize the economy. We have also announced the new national $962 million Regional Relief and Recovery Fund, which we are talking about today, and it is delivered by Canada's 6 regional development agencies, including FedDev Ontario, and that's in Southern Ontario. $213 million in financing support is available to small businesses, and $39.4 million is available through the Community Futures Development Corporations to support rural businesses and communities. So as Parliamentary Secretary for FedDev Ontario, I've been meeting and speaking with business owners and stakeholders like yourselves to hear firsthand about how the pandemic is affecting companies and organizations. And today I am pleased to be here with 2 officers from FedDev Ontario, Alex Siriani and Diet Galtam. They will answer your questions and talk about eligibility and applications to RRRF. Good morning, Alex and Diet.
Thanks very much, Kate, for your support. Really appreciate it, and thank you for setting up this platform for an important conversation this morning. So, like you mentioned, to tell us more about the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund, we're joined by colleagues Alex Siriani and Diet Galton, managers with FedDev Ontario, and they'll walk us through the application guidelines, the eligibility criteria, and we'll follow that up by a Q&A session. We'll aim to wrap up the session by 11 a.m. So thank you, Alex and Diet, and over to you, please.
Good morning. My name is Diat Galton, and I'm a manager of strategic policy at FedDev Ontario. Just before I get started, I want to extend a big thank you to the London Economic Development Corporation for organizing this webinar today. In addition, I would like to thank all the participants for joining to learn more about our recently launched Regional Relief and Recovery Fund program. Some of you may be familiar with the FedDev Ontario and possibly even worked with us before and carried out projects with our support. However, some of you may not be aware of what FedDev Ontario is, so I just want to provide a brief overview for you. FedDev Ontario is one of Canada's 6 regional development agencies. It has its headquarters located in Waterloo, and we have offices located in Ottawa, Peterborough, and Toronto as well. We play a central role in delivering on the government's innovation and skills plan. We deliver tailored program to support innovation, economic, and growth. We provide support to businesses through our business and scale up and productivity screen, to regional ecosystems. This is for the non-for-profit community and for community economic development. There are 6 regional development agencies throughout Canada, located in different regions. In Atlantic Canada, we have ACOA, which is the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency. In Quebec, we have what's known as CEDQ, or the Canadian Economic Development Agency for Quebec. Ontario has 2 economic development agencies. That would be FedDev and also FedNor, which applies to Northern Ontario. In Western Canada, we have the Western Economic Diversification Agency, and for Northern Canada, we have CanNor. Moving along there, our programming includes programs, like I've mentioned, that support innovation, but in addition, we also deliver programmings on a national level during times when we may be experiencing natural disasters or need stimulus funding. We also ensure that Southern Ontario interests are represented in the development of federal policy and programming. So moving along now, we'll move into our new program. As Parliamentary Secretary Young has indicated, there are a number of support measures that have been announced over recent weeks, including things like the Canada Emergency Business Account, wage subsidy, etc. However, despite these measures, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business Survey conducted in April indicated that 40% of SMEs report that their gross sales revenues have declined in the range of 75 to 100%. 86% have reported that need more help from government to cover rent and other fixed costs. And 38% have indicated they need assistance even though they may qualify for at least one of these measures. And this may be due to eligibility criteria or excess demand. As such, on April the 17th, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that the 6 RDAs would be delivering a $962 million fund to support SMEs that are impacted by COVID-19. This would include $675 million to be delivered by the RDAs, and another $287 million to be delivered by the community futures organizations through agreements with the RDAs. The CFDC funding will be used to support Main Street businesses in rural and remote areas. So what we plan to do here today is just go over the guidelines for the program. We'll touch on the eligibility criteria, the eligible applicant, the types of costs that would be expected to be supported under the program. In addition, we would look into the assessment process, the application, types of funding that are available, what you can expect when you actually have received approval, and the reporting requirements that would be necessary to report back on when you receive a contribution. So the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund has now been launched in Southern Ontario. As mentioned by Parliamentary Secretary Young, we have approximately $230 million in RRF funding to be delivered throughout Southern Ontario. In addition, there's $39.4 million funding to support the CFDCs in our region. The CFD support is intended to support Main Street businesses and sole proprietors, including retail shops, restaurants, and corner stores, as well as businesses of strategic importance to the community. The maximum amount available in the CFDCs is $40,000. Moving along, I just want to talk about the objectives of the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund in Southern Ontario. This fund was launched to fill gaps and supplement other federal relief measures, as well as complement those provided by other levels of government. The fund seeks to provide support to SMEs that do not qualify for or have in decline for current Government of Canada COVID-19 relief measures. Just want to point out that even though the focus is on those that may have in decline or do not qualify, there has been a need that's recognized that some organizations, businesses may have fixed operating costs that go beyond what was currently offered. So there is an opportunity, even if you have actually received support under other programs such as the Canada Emergency Business Account, that you maybe have to apply for a top-up of your funding under our programming in FedDev Ontario. The aim of the program is to mitigate the financial pressures Southern Ontario SMEs face so they continue their operations, keep paying employees, and prepare for successful recovery. Now we'll look at the eligibility criteria. For those of you who may have applied to FedDev Ontario before for support, generally the type of program that we offer is projects. And when I say projects, there is some fixed outcomes associated with certain activities that you would carry out in the course of your project, and we provide support in that way. However, with this program, it's a little bit different. The activity that we're supporting right now is basically increasing liquidity of your organization to enable you to keep running, keep the doors open during this pandemic. To be eligible under the program, you must be a Canadian or provincially incorporated business, cooperative or Indigenous-owned business located in Southern Ontario. When I say located in Southern Ontario, I'm referring to that would be the actual location where the funding is going. You may have your headquarters in another region, but you could still be eligible to receive Southern Ontario support under the RRRF if the actual funding was going to your business that's located within our region. You must have 1 to 499 full-time equivalent employees on your payroll, and that is consistent with the definition of a small, medium-sized enterprise that is applied throughout the Government of Canada. You must demonstrate that you're facing funding pressures with fixed operating costs due to COVID-19. There will be an area on your application form where you could actually elaborate on the pressures that you're facing. Very importantly, you must have first applied to other COVID-19 emergency credit relief measures for which you are eligible. So there will be places, and Alex will speak to this on your application form, where you can select those that you have applied to or those that you applied to and you were deemed ineligible. You must be planning to continue operating your business or resuming operations. And finally, lastly, you must be a viable business pre-COVID-19. When we say a viable business, what we're meaning there is you must have the ability to repay the contributions. This is not intended to be a fund that would support businesses that were struggling pre-COVID. It's for those that are experiencing difficulties during these unprecedented times. Moving along to the eligible calls. Oh, sorry. We're looking at the priorities right now. We have a limited amount of funding available. It's $213 million. So, there may be more demand than available funding. If that happens, the SMEs that are significant employers in the community and critical industries such as manufacturing, technology, and tourism may be given priority. In addition, SMEs that support the government's commitment to inclusive growth with regards to supporting women, Indigenous peoples, youth, persons with disabilities, visible minorities, newcomers, and official language minority communities may also be given priority. Just want to point out here that, again, this is in situations where we find that the demand exceeds the available resources that we have to distribute. We will be assessing applications as they come in, so I would encourage you, if you are interested in our program, to apply as soon as possible. The priority areas would be more so applied as the funding actually gets drawn down upon. So there will be no set aside for potential applicants coming in and saying, you know what, they're not a priority right now, we'll put them aside. They will be assessed as they come in. Just want to move along now to the eligible types of costs that would be supported. We're focusing on fixed operating costs, those that would be non-deferrable. What we're referring to now would include things like lease payments for existing equipment, vehicle operating expenses, and other office expenses. It could include things like your property taxes, your utility bills, insurance, bank charges, and any professional fees that you may incur as a regular part of your business. Just want to point out salaries and benefits associated with employees would only be eligible for support if you are not eligible or you have been declined from other measures such as the Canada Wage Subsidy measure, or for pre-revenue firms, it would be IRAP's Industrial Assistance Program. Rent is also the same thing. We would only consider it eligible if you have not accessed the Canadian Commercial Rent Program. We are aware of the fact that you cannot directly apply as a business to this program, and you would rely on your landlords to actually apply on your behalf to be able to get the benefit from it. We have heard that some landlords, even though they're eligible, they do not want to apply. So if this is the case with you, you are eligible to include rent as part of your application form when you submit your request for funding. Moving along, we'll have a look at things that are considered ineligible. Ineligible costs are costs that are deemed unreasonable or unrelated to the fixed operating costs. It would include things like mortgage or loan payments. The reason that we're not actually including mortgage and loan payments there is that our financial institutions have indicated that they are willing to look with potential clients that they may have with regards to their mortgages and loans payments and possibly defer. We would not be supporting new capital expenditures or replacement costs of any equipment. Refinancing existing debt, amortization and goodwill, or acquisition of lands and buildings. So again, the focus of this here is actually to make sure that you have the funding available to maintain your fixed operating costs. So when the time comes to reopen or to, increase your business activity because restrictions are being limited there, you would be in a position to do so quickly. Moving along, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Alex. Alex is going to have a discussion with you regarding the application process, as well as the funding options that are available, the reporting, disbursement of funds, etc. Over to you, Alex.
Thanks, Diet. Good morning, everybody. So as Diet mentioned, I'll just go into a little bit more detail around the specifics of the different funding options available in the RRRF. Talk a little bit about the application process, how funds are dispersed to funded recipients, and information surrounding those elements. So as Diet mentioned previously, when she was discussing how this program is a bit different from some of the other programs that FedDev would typically offer and RDAs would typically offer, one of the key differences with this program as well is that there isn't a specific funding amount that a organization is seeking when they're submitting their application. There is one question on the application form where an applicant can identify whether or not the funding amount that they're requesting is above $40,000. And that will essentially kind of put the application under two different categories or two different options. So I'll go over those two different options with you just to kind of give you a sense of what they entail. So under the first option, it would be a conditionally repayable contribution of up to $40,000, which would essentially be an interest-free loan with partial forgiveness of the loan amount. So in this option, there would be no payments required until December 31st, 2022, and up to 10% or up to $10,000 of the contribution would be forgiven, provided that 75% or up to $30,000 of the contribution is repaid to FedDev Ontario by December 31st, 2022. If that portion is not repaid by December 31st, 2022, the remaining balance owed will be converted to a term loan with no forgivable portion. So the one thing that I wanted to stress under this option would be available to those recipients who are not in receipt of CEBA funding. CEBA does offer a similar forgivable portion on the loans being issued through that program. And given that, if a recipient is already in receipt of CEBA funding, then we would essentially just convert the loan that would be issued to the recipient from the RRRF to option 2, which I'll get into now. Under option 2, we're offering contributions of up to $500,000 that are unconditionally repayable. So again, an interest-free, fully repayable loan, it would be 100% repayable. And similar to the first option, there would be no payments required until December 31st, 2022. And there would be a fixed payment schedule that would commence on January 2023. So just to kind of talk a little bit about each one of the funding options and the available funding amounts, just to give a little bit of detail in terms of how the funding amounts are determined. So under option 1, the contribution amount is determined through, it's generally going to be the lesser of 3 months of eligible and supported fixed costs, or $40,000. And under option 2, the contribution amount will generally be the lesser of 3 months of eligible and supported fixed costs, or the maximum contribution amount that's identified in the table just below option 2 on this slide. So if folks on today's call are unable to see the table that's included here, I will go through it, but just want to reassure everyone that this information is included in our program guidelines, which are available on our website. But just to give you a sense of what the determination is for the maximum contributions amounts under option 2. So it's essentially based on 5% of the applicant's 2019 revenue. So for example, if we're dealing with an applicant who has revenues that are less than or up to $1 million, the maximum contribution amount would be up to $50,000. Similarly, for those organizations with revenues from $1 to $2 million, the maximum contribution amount would be up to $100,000. And it goes on that way up to a maximum of $500,000. The other thing I want to point out is that for pre-revenue firms that have received venture capital or angel support, the maximum contribution amount would be up to $250,000. So the other thing I want to point out as well, you'll notice here that pre-revenue firms are listed under option 2. However, that does not preclude a pre-revenue firm from selecting option 1 on their application form should they wish to receive a contribution amount of up to $40K and they had not yet received CEBA funding, had not received CEBA funding because they were ineligible. They can still elect to receive funds under option 1 with that forgivable portion. The table here just basically shows what the maximum amount for a pre-revenue firm would be, but again, it does not preclude a pre-revenue firm from applying under option 1. So we'll talk a little bit about disbursement options and how exactly disbursement works under the programs, how exactly funds are paid to recipients when they're approved and are about to receive a contribution through the program. So they work somewhat similarly across the 2 different options with some minor differences. So under option 1 for contributions that are up to $40,000, approved contributions will be dispersed through a single advance payment. So basically how that will work, once your application is approved, you'll be notified by FedDev Ontario. And once you're notified by FedDev Ontario of your approval, FedDev will send you a contribution agreement to be signed by your organization and also to be signed by FedDev Ontario. Once we receive a fully executed copy of that contribution agreement, along with electronic deposit information for us to be able to transfer those funds into your account, once we receive those 2 things, that will be a trigger for us to initiate the single advance payment, which would be the full amount of your contribution. For those contributions under option 2, it does work a little bit different. It's kind of done under 2 different phases. So for example, for any contributions up to or less than $100,000, it'll work exactly as it does under option 1. So the same principles apply. Once you're approved, we receive your executed contribution agreement along with your electronic deposit information, and that's the trigger to issue that one and only payment to your organization. However, for those applicants who've been approved for a contribution that is greater than $100,000, it works a little bit differently. So the same steps apply in terms of being able to access the funds. So you'll still need to execute the contribution agreement. You'll still need to provide the electronic deposit information. However, the initial payment will be 80% of the contribution, and that will be paid to recipients upon receipt of your executed contribution agreement. And in order to access the remaining 20%, the recipient would need to complete an attestation form, basically stating that that the advance that they initially received, the 80% of the contribution, has been expended, that the organization continues to remain in operation, and also that they continue to be in need of those funds. Once we receive that attestation from your organization, we will expend the remaining 20% of the contribution. So that's the key difference between the two different options in terms of how funds are expended under the program. In terms of reporting requirements, once all of the funds have been spent, your organization will need to submit an attestation that the full amount of the contribution was expended for eligible fixed operating costs. You will also need to provide a narrative describing how the contribution that was received was used and how it helped to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19 on your organization. In addition to that, we'll also need to have a sense of the number of jobs that were maintained as a result of the contribution. And that's also something that's identified at the outset in the application form as well. And also we'll be seeking an attestation or a confirmation that your organization is continuing its operation. And at that time, it's also an opportunity to identify any other information that could be requested at that time specific to any given project. So I'll get into a little bit about the application process and how applicants can apply to get access to the funds through this program. So the application form is available on our website. So the application form is just a PDF application form, and it basically comes along with an application guide, which has been developed as a companion document for the application form. And basically how that application guide works, it's basically framed in such a way that gives step-by-step instructions right from accessing the form on our website, how to download it to your desktop and to complete it. And it talks a little bit about each one of the questions that appear within the application form, gives you a little bit of background to kind of give some detail about what exactly we're looking for in each one of those questions, how to complete each one of those questions. So it's intended to be a companion piece for applicants to kind of have right next to them as they're completing the application form, just to ensure that you know, if there is some lack of clarity with any of the questions, the application guide is intended to demystify any elements of the application form that might be a little confusing. In addition to that, we also encourage any applicants who are having any additional difficulty after consulting with the application guide, if they're still having some trouble with any one of the questions, you can definitely contact our contact center, and those details are available on our website as well. One of the things that we really want to encourage all applicants when they're submitting their application form, please ensure that your application is complete. You need to ensure that all mandatory fields on your application are completed and all supporting attachments are included with your application form. You'll note on the application form that all mandatory fields are denoted with an asterisk next to each one of those fields. In addition to that, when you try to submit the form, if there are any mandatory fields that have been left blank, the form will give you a prompt to let you know that a mandatory field has been left blank. And and that field should be outlined in red for you to fill out, so that this way it can kind of facilitate the form getting completed and submitted as a complete application. In addition to that, we want to make sure that all applicants are including all the mandatory attachments with their application form. So some of the mandatory attachments that you'll need to include with your application form are financial statements for the past 2 years, your most recent interim financial statement, and also a completed officer certificate, which is available on our website, which is essentially just a list of the officers and directors of your organization, and a signature for each of those members of your organization. So it's very important just to kind of make sure that you're submitting a complete application, as that will allow us to be able to assess the application. And incomplete applications will not be assessed. So if we do receive an incomplete application, you will be notified. So you'll get an email from FedDev indicating that your application that we've received is incomplete. We'll identify what was missing on that application form, and you will have an opportunity to resubmit your application. However, when you do resubmit your application, you will not be in the same queue. You'll kind of be at the back of the queue in terms of when it was submitted. You won't be able to kind of be in the queue as in accordance with when you initially submitted your form. So that's why we really encourage all applicants to really take a look at the application guide and ensure that all of the elements of the application form are completed and mandatory attachments are included as well, to ensure that we're able to assess your application from its initial submission. In terms of the assessment process, or before we get to the assessment process, I think Diet mentioned this a little bit earlier as well, but this kind of, we'll just talk a little bit about the intake process itself. So the intake process for this program is a continuous intake, meaning that there is no fixed time period that the program is open accepting applications. We will be accepting applications on a continuous basis, and they'll be assessed on a first come, first served basis. And they will be reviewed as they are received until funds are fully committed. So that's why it's really imperative that if you are interested in applying for the fund, that you do so as quickly as possible. There is no, as I said, there is no fixed time period to say you'll have 2 weeks to apply or a month to apply or anything like that. However, given that it is a fixed amount of funds available in the program, we do encourage all interested applicants to apply as quickly as possible. So to talk a little bit about the assessment process. So as indicated previously, the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund supports organizations that do not qualify or have been declined for current Government of Canada COVID-19 relief measures. And some of the assessment criteria include impact of COVID-19 pandemic on business operations, availability of other financial supports. So for example, access to credit at a financial institution or other federal COVID-19 measures, viability of the applicant. This kind of takes a look at the ability for the applicant to repay the contribution, and the economic benefits of RRF support. So in addition to that, just want to point out that on our website, we do have an applicant toolkit, which basically just provides you with some of these items that I had mentioned previously. So our program guidelines kind of go over a lot of the elements that Diet and I talked about in this presentation today. Everything that we've talked about today will be available on the program guidelines as well. So if we were moving too quickly, or there are a couple of things that you missed, or perhaps you wanted to kind of circle back on, all of the information is available on our website on the program guidelines. The application form is available on our website as well. As I said, it's a PDF application, and we encourage users to download the application form to their desktop prior to completing the application form. The application form can be opened up on your browser if you are using Internet Explorer. However, if you're not using Internet Explorer, it's highly recommended that you download the application form prior to completing it. In addition to that, we talked a little bit about the application guide, which is basically the companion tool to the application form, and just kind of gives you a step-by-step walkthrough on how to complete the application form. And also, we also have answers to common questions So there's an extensive list of frequently asked questions on our website, and they are updated from time to time if we do find that we're receiving a lot of questions from applicants that tend to be repetitive. So the intent there is to really ensure that if we are hearing a lot of questions, we're trying to get that info over to applicants so that this way, you know, it can kind of make the process of applying a little bit more seamless and can kind of give folks as much information as possible at the outset when they're applying to the program. So lastly, we just have available here some of the other federal supports that are available that MP Young talked about right at the outset of this presentation. So just wanted to bring everyone's attention to these other available supports and encourage everyone to basically visit the Canada's COVID-19 Economic Response webpage to basically keep apprised of all of these different funding supports that are available and to ensure that you know that they are aware what they are and where they are and everything like that. So just wanted to turn folks' attention to these as well. So those are listed here as well, and there's some additional information on those on our second slide here. Basically, we're basically just indicating that that this program, the RRRF, is not intended to duplicate any of the other existing federal supports. It's basically being made available to those organizations who were either denied or rejected from the existing supports available, or despite the fact that they received those supports, they're still facing financial pressures and still need support. So just wanted to ensure that there's an understanding of the way that this program works in concert with the other existing supports that are available. So I think that just brings us to a close here. So I think we'll turn it back over to Kapil.
Thank you so much, Alex and Diet, for such a great informative session. We've received lots of questions prior to this session as well as throughout the presentation. So let's dive right into this. We've tried to bundle them by key themes. So the first few questions relate to defining priority criteria. How does the priority criteria impact turnaround times for FedDev? Will a business that may be deemed as a lower priority be put on a wait list? And also as a follow-up, does this imply that a small retail or restaurant operation that has significant overhead, fixed costs, and outside of rural areas are not eligible?
Hi, so I'll take this question here. The priorities will only be applied in the situations where the funding starts to become depleted. So again, this is why it's important to get your application in as quickly as possible. From the beginning, there will be no set aside saying, you know, this is not in a priority area, it's not a key contributor to the community. Each day, pretty much, as we're going through the process, we will regroup and have a look and see, you know, where our funding is. When we get to a point where the funding is being depleted and we still have much demand, we'll start applying the priority criteria. Retailers, stores, etc., even if they're not located in rural areas, they certainly can apply. And again, I would encourage them to get it in as soon as possible.
Thank you. The next few questions apply to the eligibility of the program. The first one is Innovation Assistance Program is limited regarding salary coverage. Are salary amounts above the weekly $847 maximum eligible under the RRRF?
With regards to salary, we would consider it to support it if you have not received support under either the Innovation Assistance Program by NRC for pre-revenue firms, or for those that are receiving wage support through the Canadian Wage Subsidiary Initiative. We would not pay in addition to what you have received from those. So again, you would have to indicate if you have applied and if you have been successful in receiving the funding.
Thank you. Are salaries for employees hired more recently than March 1st eligible?
If the salaries are a regular part of your payroll, and you may often see this here for seasonal industries, for example, and tourism, if you normally would employ people at this time of the year and they're normal part of your payroll, they could be considered if it's a fixed operational cost.
Now, can sole proprietors qualify, or do they have to be a corporation?
For the portion that's being delivered by FedDev Ontario, they must be incorporated entities. However, want to note that sole proprietorships are eligible to apply to the Community Futures Development Corporations to receive support up to $40,000. In addition, I just want to point out that recently the Canada Business account was expanded to include sole proprietors. Those that do not have employees on the payroll per se, they pay them either with dividends or contractors or other mechanisms.
Since pre-revenue companies are eligible, would a company that does not have 2 years of financial statements be able to submit through the normal application process?
Yes, they can. We support organizations that are startups. We ask them to apply if they have financial statements, to submit what they do have. It may be less than a year. It's important that they show their interim financial statements since the COVID-19 pandemic has arose.
The next few questions relate to funding uses. Can this program be used to pay suppliers for inventory purchased pre-COVID?
Yes, that is eligible. If this is a normal part of your fixed operating costs that you would be paying out for inventories on a monthly basis and now that your income has been reduced, that you're struggling in this area, it's definitely something that we would consider supporting.
Can this be used to fund a pivot or new equipment purchase necessary for companies to remain viable?
The gist of this program is to support fixed operating costs. So we will support the payments for existing equipment, but the intention is not to actually support new equipment. That being said, if there's a certain piece of equipment that is needed, for example, for the safety of your employees and that, I would encourage you just to make the case for it. But again, the target of the program is to support fixed operating costs.
How can the RRRF supplement existing funding options such as the Innovation Assistance Program?
The Innovation Assistance Program would be supporting the salaries only. So it's recognized that, even with pre-revenue firms there, that they would have other fixed operating costs. So they may come to us for other costs outside of the salaries. However, if they receive support under that program, they would not be eligible to receive any support for salaries under the RRRF.
Now, I know you captured this during your presentation, but we received a number of questions on this, so it's worth revisiting briefly. There are a number of small businesses that are struggling to work with their landlords if participation in the rent relief program is being declined by the landlords. So there are a lot of questions around what recourses small businesses might have, or can the RRF program be used for rent relief?
Yes, the RRF program can be used for rent relief. We would encourage all applicants, to pursue with their landlord the ability to getting commercial rent relief assistance under the program. However, we have heard from various businesses that some landlords just don't want to apply for it. They don't think it's worthwhile to go through the hassle of applying for the program and the implementation of it. In those cases, you just indicate that you have not obtained any funding support from this program, and you would be eligible to apply under the RRRF.
Thank you. A number of other miscellaneous questions as well. Will any traditional lending criteria be used in assessing loan applications, such as debt ratios or credit scores?
So we'll be taking a look at a number of different assessment criteria similar to the ones that I had gone through earlier when going through the presentation. So primarily we'll be just kind of taking a look at the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the organization. Be taking a look at the extent to which an organization has applied for other existing supports. And those are our primary eligibility criteria. However, we'll also be taking a look at the extent to which the organization would be able to repay the contribution. So we'll be taking a look at certain metrics to measure an organization's financial health.
Now, can you please clarify the geographic coverage for this program?
Yep, so the geographic coverage for this program is we're basically delivering the program within Southern Ontario. So it's essentially the 37 census divisions that comprise the Southern Ontario region. So if you'd like to take a look at, I guess, a more accurate map with each of those census divisions outlined, it is available on our website. So you'll be able to kind of see each of the different areas. And if you're struggling to kind of determine whether or not your organization would be a better fit for FedDev Ontario, or perhaps it's just outside of the catchment area, you know, it could potentially be for FedNor, you'll be able to make that distinction just through a visit to our website.
Thank you. And I see that a link has also been shared in the chat function with that map as well. So thank you, Alex. Now, will this program fund grants for infrastructure development, either by companies or for arm's length civic organizations, not-for-profit institutions, and so on?
So this program is available to support fixed operating costs for organizations that have been impacted by COVID-19. So at this point, or from the perspective of how this program is designed and from what its intended impacts are expected to be and its intended focuses, there are no supports available for infrastructure projects through this program. However, I would encourage everyone to kind of keep an eye, as I said, on the Government of Canada economic response for COVID-19 for all of the available COVID-19 response supports that are available.
Sorry, just a follow up to that. So for fixed operating costs, is it restricted to for-profit corporations, or can not-for-profit organizations apply for this program as well?
For the component that's being delivered through FedDev Ontario, it's for-profit organizations. So as we said in the eligibility criteria section, it would need to be a Canadian or provincially incorporated business, a cooperative, or an Indigenous-owned incorporated business.
Okay, thank you. We're running tight on time. It's getting close to the end of this seminar. I know we received lots of great questions. I really appreciate both Alex and Diet taking the time to answer so many of these questions. Thank you so much. I'd now like to welcome Kate Young back to bring some closing remarks, please. Kate, welcome.
Thank you very much. Start my video, okay. Still learning all of this. Anyway, thank you so much to Alex and Diet for joining us today. And I hope that this session has provided some valuable information about the program. It's not easy. I know government is often criticized for working and acting too slowly. What these public servants have done is quite incredible. Over the course of 8 weeks, they've worked night and day designing these types of programs and putting them together. So I want to thank them for working so hard to make sure that they were helping small businesses. And I just wanted to say, I just want the business owners of London who are watching and listening today to be rest assured that the Government of Canada has your back, and that we are doing everything we can to make sure that you are successful. And we hope that this program, and as well as all of the other programs that we've announced, that you'll be able to tap into to help you reopen once we get through this pandemic. We've often said these are uncharted territories. They are. We're learning together. We're in this together. So Kapil, thank you for inviting me today, and thank you to LEDC for having this webinar. And I'm just a phone call away if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kate. Alex and Diet, can't thank you enough for taking the time to be with us today. Any final thoughts or comments or tips that you'd like to share? We have a couple of minutes.
Just want to reiterate, just encourage everyone who's interested in applying to do so as soon as possible.
So to recap, next steps, like Alex mentioned, please visit the FedDev Ontario's website to apply to the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund. You can get in touch with our team at LEDC for additional support and visit our COVID site. The link has been shared in the chat feature. And stay tuned for a follow-up email with a link to this recorded session. As always, if you have any other questions that come up, please do let us know and we'll be sure to get these questions answered. So we're in great time, just before 11 o'clock. Again, Alex, thank you. Diet, thank you for your time, as well as Steve Mason at FedDev for helping us organize this session. Thanks so much. Have a great day, everybody.